Now we get into the ACC. This is where I get, a little more excited. Now, don't get me wrong. I still love SEC football, still love Big 12 football, but ACC just does something to me. These football teams, it just gets me excited. Wake Forest and Florida State. We saw what happened last week with Wake Forest. This football team's exciting. There was some issues, obviously, in their secondary. Clemson woke up a little bit. We saw DJ Ukulele finally get some excitement, finally start seeing that he is not that quarterback that we saw last year. And then obviously Sam Hartman breaking a Wake Forest record for 6 touchdown passes, almost could have been 7. They lose a heartbreaker in overtime. They only move it back 1 spot in the rankings. I believe now they're 21st, if I remember correctly. I don't have that up in front of me, but yeah, they're a good football team. On the flip side, I don't think anyone, maybe the Florida State quarterback booster club that we saw Mike Norvell talking at in the preseason this year, all fired up like it was a sermon, might be excited for it or might have even predicted it. But I don't think anyone predicted Florida State to be this good of a football team. There were some woes and some concerns that Jordan Travis might be hurt and out for the season. Well, that was not a concern last week. This team is fantastic. They look really good. And there's a reason why, even though Wake Forest just put on probably the game of their lives against Clemson, head into Florida State as the underdogs. What's your thoughts on this game? As you can see, I just hyped it up really well. I'm excited for this football game. There's some really good ACC matchups on today. Florida State's a hell of a football, hell of a football team. But Wake Forest, man, so are they. This can be a good matchup. What you got?
Well, simply stated, Wake Forest is a better football team than Florida State. And that's not taking anything away from Florida State. And Jordan Travis, again, another quarterback that's not going to, wow you, and you're not going to look at the analytics of it and all those things and say, boy, this guy I can see him leading an NFL team on a Sunday. He could be a backup, I think, because he is such a smart, good game manager. But Wake Forest, Sam Hartman, then you could end the conversation. As good as everything. Yeah. If you just say Sam Hartman, and I'm going to use the same argument in a game we're going to talk about in a little bit, but Sam Hartman is a difference maker, and he showed that on the big stage, against Clemson. I really think. And the other thing to think of is that Hartman's probably the best quarterback that Florida State has seen so far, as well as their defense has surprised us. I think, Sam Hartman's just a totally different breed of cat for them. They may have a more consistent offensive attack spread out down in Tallahassee, but Wake Forest, I mean, that had to have been so deflating, because really they could have won that game. I don't want to put should have, because Clemson's a good football team, but they could have won that game in a lot of different situations. And Wake Forest just flat out, from their star down to the guy that'll never get off the bench, they're just a better football team at this point. Okay. We're having this conversation next year. I think Florida State's going to be a top 10 football team next year.
I'm glad that the conversations from Mike Norvell are finally over about him being in the hot seat, because that's obviously not the case anymore. And I also like that today, and especially with this segment, this one right here, you and I finally get to disagree on something. That's great, because we are usually on the same page, and we finally get to disagree on something almost wholeheartedly. I think Florida State's the better football team, and wholeheartedly, I think that the quarterbacks, I think, are pretty close. I will give the nod to Sam Hartman on that one. Don't get me wrong. I think Sam Hartman's a top-notch quarterback. Jordan Travis is really close, but Trayshawn Ward, the running back of Florida State, incredible. We've seen what Johnny Wilson could do at wide receiver, and he's not even supposed to be the top wide receiver for the Seminoles. You got Micah Pittman up there. And then you look on that defensive side, their secondary has been absolutely outstanding. That's something that Clemson has had an issue with, and Clemson had injuries in their secondary last week. Sam Hartman exposed that. I don't know if he has that that way of doing that this week. I don't know if Sam Hartman can do that. Florida State has only allowed 165 yards per game through the air against their teams. Now, granted, they're not playing Clemson football teams week by week. They did play Louisville. They did play Boston College. They are on the lower level of the ACC, but they're still conference games. So you know how that goes. I think Florida State's a better football team in here. I think that's why they are a 6.5-point favorite. I think that's a lot of points, though. I'm not going to lie, because I do think that this game is a lot closer in skill. That's probably why you and I can make this disagreement of who's better. Looking at this spread, 6.5 points in favor of Florida State. You over under 66 points. Looking at the game last week of how many points were put up in the game between Clemson and Wake Forest makes you want to really chase that over. But again, that Florida State secondary really just gets me excited. But I think I would still push the over here. I think easily both these teams could hit 33 points apiece when Wake Forest is averaging 42 and Florida State's averaging 38. But when it comes to that spread, even though I think Florida State wins this football game, I don't know if they win by a full touchdown. So I would take Wake Forest with the points in this game.
Well, obviously, I'm picking Wake to win the games. But no, you're right. It's going to come down really to who has the ball last, and I think it's going to be Wake Forest. I think it's going to have the ball in Hartman's hand, and he is going to execute the final scoring drive, and that's going to have Wake Forest win outright. I think Florida State will control time of possession, but I don't think Hartman needs a whole lot of time of possession. And their defense, well, that could be troublesome for their defense because Wake Forest has been prone to giving up big plays at the wrong time. I'm still going Wake Forest all the way across the board. So again, I mean, if they're getting points, that's a bonus for you out there. I'm slamming the over. I think this is going to be a really exciting back and forth kind of a football game. I think Wake Forest is going to strike quicker, while Florida State's going to be more methodical, throughout the game and try to keep Hartman off the field. But I'm going Wake Forest all the way on this one.
Yeah, this will be the game at 3:30 that I have on my main TV without a doubt. I'm excited for it. This game's on ABC. Now, sorry, folks who are on Dish Network. I don't know if you saw this crazy stuff that happened overnight. Dish Network and Walt Disney Company decided that they're going to go into a contract dispute on October 1st. So if you have Dish, I said DirecTV, is Dish. You are not going to have ABC, ESPN, any of that stuff today. So get yourself a free trial to Hulu Live or something if you are in that spot, so you can at least get a week trial, because I'm sure they'll figure it out sooner or later. But you're going to get really pissed off if you can't watch college football. I'm not in that spot. I just saw that remark, so I thought I'd put that out there for you. But this game's going to be great. It's going to be on my main screen TV.